Why do we do anything in our lives? Why do we want to become entrepreneurs? Why do we want to become creators? Why do we want to be people who want to move towards action? Because at some point we all want to find purpose, right? We want to find things that we can build, things we can create, and really hold them in our hands and say, oh, this is something which I put together. And so we're all driven by that. But what often happens is when you're driven by that, what you don't do is that you don't sit back and think about, why am I doing this again? Why should I do this again? What am I doing differently from other people? And how do I see this evolving for time to come? Because we don't ask ourselves why, we jump straight into what we're going to do. So we go and say, okay, I'm going to be a creator. Let me go buy cameras. Let me figure out tutorials to learn editing. Let me start shooting stuff. Let me start putting content out there. I want to become a podcaster. I'll go buy a mic. I will start recording audio. I'll start putting it out there. What are the platforms to distribute it on? Become an entrepreneur. I'll start building business plans and thinking about investors and everything else. But what we don't start with, before you hit record, before you start building the business plan, before you start anything, what you got to do is sit down and say, why? And so today, I want to talk to you about how I work to figure out my why. I have a framework I've built for myself over the years. And I've built this because I've realized that I've done many things without asking myself that why when I started. And I've had to come to it at a much later point in my life. And because I came back to it much later, it got a little tricky for me to figure a way to take what I was doing and put it into that path that I felt it need to go towards. But before I go into that, I'm going to make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. And I'm going to talk to you about how I build my why. Let me first tell you a story. Back in the day in 2009, when I set up my first business, which was The Glitch, we didn't think of our why. We were two people who were working in a music channel who decided to quit and start a company. The only reason we went and start a company was because we realized that for us to be able to produce content for brands, for digital, things which were not necessarily a thing at that point of time, people weren't creating content for digital in 2009. For that, it had to be a company. So we said, okay, how can we make money from this? Who would give us work? And we started off. But a year or two down the line, once we stabilized financially, we realized that we didn't know which direction we were really going in. So sometime in year 4 or year 5, we actually sat down and figured out our why, and that made us really focus in a certain zone. And that also made us grow exponentially. And eventually went from two people in an apartment to 700 plus people, even like more than that eventually, when till I exited last year. And so the why came midway, but the why made me focus. When I started as a creator, I didn't think of my why. I've become a creator by accident. Again, I seem to have this problem. I fall into things by accident. I became a creator by accident because I went on a podcast as a guest and I was asked if I want to host my own podcast. I said, this will be fun to do. Let me just do it. And then after some time, balancing work and creator life, because I was excited by both, became trickier, became tougher till I sat down one day, a day when I was feeling like I don't want to do this anymore, to my creator side. And I wrote down this framework. And I've been using it ever since. I've been using this framework ever since. Whenever I feel like, okay, I don't want to do this, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what this direction is leading towards, I go back to this simple framework where you basically ask yourself 4 questions. Question number 1, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? It's a simple question. You can't write a paragraph. I actually get a pen and a pad right now. Pick up your phone if you can. Put it down on a note and say anything you want to build, anything you want to do. Why do you want to do it? It has to be almost like a one tweet pitch of saying, why do you want to do this? Like if you ask me today, Take a Pause as a podcast started off as something called Useless Information, became the Varun Duggi Show, and then eventually became Take a Pause. If I go back to Useless Information, I wanted to talk to people about things they never get to talk about. Because I felt like most podcasts ask people to come in and talk about the stuff that they always talk about. That was my first question. Then comes the second question. The second question is asking yourself, Why should you do this? Why are you the right person to do this? Do you have the experience to back this up? If you're a subject matter expert, let's say you are an expert in marketing and advertising like I was, you can start a podcast called Advertising is Dead, which is focusing on how that space is changing. If you're someone who has had enough experiences in life as a creator, as an individual, as a professional, you could gravitate towards personal development, professional development, like I did when this podcast started. Just take a pause. Before you start anything, you got to think and you got to ask yourself, what are you bringing to the table that is unique to you in terms of your background, your space in life right now, or the experience you've had? And what ends up happening when you ask this question is you realize that experience is not everything in the sense of professional growth. You might be someone in college right now. You might be like, okay, what do I bring to the table? You bring the fact that you are someone in college right now. You understand the perspective of someone who is in college, who is going through exactly what you're going through. So you can actually talk about that more authentically than someone like me who's 40. That's what you bring to the table. That is why you should be doing it. But till you put that on paper, you won't realize the answer to the next question, which is, what is your unique voice? And your unique voice becomes very important. It sets the tone for whatever you do. If you're an entrepreneur, you're setting the tone, saying, okay, we are here to democratize something, right? If you're building something which is only available to an exclusive set, I say, no, I want to figure a way to get more people access to it. That's you democratizing. You're a democratizer. That's your voice. If you're a creator and you're saying, okay, I want to just be a learner. My job here is to sit down, get a guest on, and learn from them. I'm almost being the learner for my audience. Or am I an expert who's sitting with other people who are also maybe experts and really speaking with that tone and really figuring out that tone? And it sometimes takes a little time to really think about it, becomes so important because that is what you naturally are. Like, I'm naturally a learner. I like to be that learner. So when even I'm talking about this right now, I'm looking at the notes that I have, because I know I have to refer to the points that I made and what I've learned over time. You could be an expert. You could be someone who's a navigator. Like, 1 second, I'm very good at putting 4 or 5 people in a room and navigating a conversation between them, which is maybe the kind of podcast you build, maybe the kind of channel you build is of 4 or 5 people sitting together and discussing varied topics. But again, your focus is the tone of your voice, what is unique to you. And that tone isn't just about being a podcaster or a creator, it's about what you do as a professional, what you do as an entrepreneur. And then comes the last and what I consider to be the most crucial question. Because as we start a lot of these things, what we worry about is that, okay, I've started this by saying this is what it is. What if I have to change this tomorrow? So we either don't change anything or we change everything. Like, this podcast was useless information. I realized after a point of time that that became too small a focus for this podcast to kind of grow and be. And as it became the Varun Dugi show, I start talk a lot more about life, start talk a lot more about insights on different things, everything from adulting to parenting to stuff I was curious about, and everything else. And as I kind of built that out there, I realized, okay, now I've gone broader. Let me figure a way to focus it back. And I focused it back to saying, this show is about what you do when you take a pause. You reflect on the past, you focus on the present, and you plan for the future. But I did this by simply stating what I like to call my perm flex. A perm flex is the term I came up with. Honestly, I couldn't find any other reference to it, which is basically, what do you want to keep permanent and what are you flexible about? If you think back on the first idea of this show, it was called useless information. The information part was what I wanted to keep permanent. The useless part, maybe not. It comes and goes. Similarly, this show was always about life and learnings about life. That's permanent. But does it have to be about me talking to camera myself? Does it have to be me talking to a guest? Does it have to be a certain kind of guest? Does it involve me interacting with any one of you one on one or in groups? All of that is flexible. Same goes for a business. If you're building a business, you're also asking yourself, which are the pieces that I'll never change? It's almost the foundation of my business. And which are the things that are flexible? I'm going to be open to trying them out, maybe not using them, but it will not change what I'm building? I mean, sit down and ask yourself these four questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? What's your tone of voice? And what's your perm flex? And you come back to this sheet every time you feel like you're using focus. You like you're using like a losing focus, and you're telling yourself that, okay, something over here is bothering me. Let me see if any of these need to change. Maybe any of these need to kind of change in terms of how I've written them down, and that gives you the most important thing you need for your why, which is not really the why. It's the clarity that comes with putting it down on paper. So as much as it becomes this big thing to say, okay, I found my why, your why changes, your why evolves. What is important to keep throughout this piece is the clarity you get from it. So try this out. Let me know if you found this framework useful, if you found this to be something that you could use. It's a simple one, but gives you a deep amount of focus. It gives you a deep amount of clarity in whatever you're doing in your life. Let me know which part of this resonated with you, which part of this was something which you are more curious to learn about. Drop that in the comments. If you want more frameworks like this, let us know in the comments as well. So before you go away and come back before the next episode drops, but make sure you hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. Smash that bell icon. I'll see you another episode of Take a Pause with me, Varun Dugirala.